Joe Biden is forced to admit that DeSantis is a better president than him. Elon Musk has ideas about how to fix Ukraine, and the DOJ sicks the FBI on pro-lifers. WTH. We'll talk about all of it and more right after the intro. All right. So, as we talked about last week, Hurricane Ian made landfall on September 28th. I don't have death toll numbers up here, but according to poweroutage.us, there are currently still over 20,000 people that are without power in Lee County, which is what we're focusing on today. And let's see, just 2 days ago, 109,000 more were without power. So they are getting some of those back up and running. But what we're talking about today is specifically the response to the hurricane and the media response to the response. So for those of you who don't know, and I think this might be the first time we're talking about him extensively on the program, Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida. I do not engage in hero worship. I caution everyone against it, but I'm a big fan of Ron DeSantis, just as much of a fan as you can be for a politician. He is still a politician. And I think that he is currently one of the GOP's better frontliners, people that are representing us. He's doing a good job in Florida. So he, as the governor of Florida, and has had a response to the hurricane, obviously, as any governor would. But the media have tried at every level and every step of the way to paint this as an overwhelming disaster. And while, yes, people have died, as they often do in hurricanes, and property gets destroyed, eventually they have now had to admit that he has done a relatively good job. So this started with the media, but it also has been a thing in the White House. So apparently Joe Biden has not spoke, like, for the longest time up to the hurricane, up until the point the hurricane made landfall. Joe Biden did not speak to Ron DeSantis about any of it, which is, I'm not one that believes that the president has to get involved in every little thing, even natural disasters. I think you send FEMA and sort of stay out of the way. We don't need you down there for a photo op, but he did make a point of reaching out to local mayors in Florida. Like, he would reach out to several of the mayors around Lee County, check and see how they were doing, but not the governor. So if you're going to do one, coordinate at you're federal, he's state, you need to coordinate at the state level. And then if you want a handshake with some mayors after that, that's fine. He got a lot of backlash from this, apparently. And after that, ended up taking a trip to Florida, where he had a lot of good things to say about Ron DeSantis and his response. I think the quote is, he's done a good job. Let's see. Biden praises DeSantis for remarkable response to Hurricane Ian. I think he's done a good job.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, so I'm going to comment on a couple things that you brought up. I hate that we now have the expectation of the president going down to a disaster area and like flying over it and seeing the scene like he's some godlike figure who can snap his fingers and fix everything. Like I talked about this a couple episodes ago, how my dad, it was personally a big deal to him that he actually told President Bush when Katrina hit, no, don't come. I got stuff to do, and I don't have time to take care of you. Don't come
governor
right
of Mississippi.
now.
Right.
Yeah. And so I felt like that was good when Haley Barbour did that. And I'm not mad with the president taking a week and a half or however long it was for him to get down there, because there's a lot of work that has to be done on the local level. And whenever you're talking about bringing a president into an area then you're talking about Secret Service detail, and you're talking about everybody parting the water so the president can just come see the disaster, and he doesn't have to do that. I was glad that he was able to praise Governor DeSantis on what has seemed to be a job well done. We talked 20,000 people still without power. It's not uncommon. We were checking stats. Hurricane hit the September 28th. That was 11 days ago from the recording of this podcast, and only 20,000 people are without power. Do you remember Katrina? Do you remember how long we were without power?
Yeah, and we were not on the coast.
No. We were without power at my home for a week, and we live
Like
several
3 to 4
hundred
3 to 4
miles
hours, yeah.
from the coast. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there were some people in the Mississippi Gulf Coast that didn't have power for 3 weeks. So
Right.
that's not uncommon, and he's actually done a particularly good job of mobilizing and being prepared as much as a governor can for a act of God, basically. He's done a great job, and I'm glad you have that picture up there. I really hope we see that picture in a couple of years, and we can call him President DeSantis. I agree. I think he is the number one guy right now, and I think there's two reasons why he hasn't thrown his name in the hat. One, he's running for re-election in November, and like you said, the media has come at him at every angle they could, saying Florida's not as good as it seems, even though everybody knows the truth of it. There's a reason that Florida gained one or two congressional seats this past redistricting, because so many people have moved to Florida, because Governor DeSantis has done a great job through COVID, which is when his celebrity status basically started, and he's continuing to point Florida in the right direction. Fighting for families, fighting to stop transing the kids, taking care of the state on a local level, and helping them with natural disasters, giving them all the resources that they need. So he's got an election to win in November. That was the first thing, and he's going to win in a
Against this
landslide.
lady.
That's no doubt. Oh, and
Nikki
secondly,
Fried.
okay. Secondly, he's not going to announce anything until Trump makes an announcement. And I sincerely hope that Donald Trump stays out of the way. And if Donald Trump runs, please don't run Governor DeSantis, because it's going to be ugly. Whoever runs against Trump, he's going to beat them up, and then they're just going to be all beat up for the general, and because the primaries are going to be tough to get through. And so
That seems to be the going wisdom. I disagree.
That's okay.
I think 2000. Gosh, when was it? 2016. 2016 was the nastiest primary I think we've probably ever seen, and we won. I wasn't a big fan of Trump back then.
That's because Trump won the nominee. I think Trump would win again if he won the nominee, but I think it's very possible that he and DeSantis go at it, and DeSantis wins the nominee, and then he just comes out of the primaries all beat to crap and back. I don't want that.
I think there's a few. I think DeSantis has to run. Period. I don't think Trump should run. I mean, if he really wants to throw his hat in the ring again, I'm not gonna say it's a particularly bad thing. I've seen some pundits talk about this. Is what you're talking about is the conventional wisdom. We don't want to split the party up too much before the general. Everybody's afraid of the thing that happened with Theodore Roosevelt 100 years ago.
I'm not worried about a bull moose party showing up. I'm not worried about that one bit.
Which is not. But you're afraid of people that are butthurt about the results not showing up, and that's fair. I did not show up to vote for Trump. I didn't.
Well, I showed up to vote. I didn't vote for Trump.
I did not vote for Trump against Hillary Clinton. I voted for him against Biden, but not Hillary Clinton.
Yes. Yes.
And there's always going to be a few of those. I think the way we're divided now, I think we're the minority. And I think after Trump, there are even fewer people like that. I think because, I was proven wrong in that my concerns about Trump were unfounded, for the most part. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. I know people who are talking about this that they want everybody to get in, because I think a rough primary makes for a stronger candidate for the general. I could see how that. I mean, Trump, I think, needs someone to fight against in the primary. I don't think Trump's good. Just being
That
candidate.
yes, I concur. And the thing about what you just said is absolutely true on the Democratic side of things. It was Hillary and Bernie going at it for the most part, and
Right.
they were handling each other with kid gloves. I don't want to hear another dang thing about our servers or whatever. He was always fighting for the other person, and they treated each other with kid gloves. And because of that, whenever they got to the fight, Hillary got knocked out because she
Right.
wasn't prepared for it.
Right.
So there's a good point in that.
And
I think
then
DeSantis has proven his worth as a fighter already.
right. Another thing that is very important to realize in politics is you have a moment, and that moment does not last forever.
True.
This is the Chris Christie
Yes.
rule. Chris
Yes.
Christie had a moment. He stepped out of the way for, I think it was Mitt Romney.
Mm-hmm.
It was either Romney
and
or
then he tried to get back in it,
and he tried to get back in it. His moment was up. DeSantis is having, you go with the guy who's having their moment. And if DeSantis can extend his moment for another 2 years, he needs to be the guy, which is not difficult.
He's been hot. He's done a lot of things right, and that's why he's been hot. You said you were a fan of him in as much as you can be a fan of a politician. I agree. I am a fan of him because he is doing good, not for any other reason. It's not because he's a celebrity. It's not because he's a businessman or anything like that. I'm a fan of what he is doing in the state of Florida. That is why I am a quote unquote fan of Ron DeSantis. My fandom extends in so much that he governs well. He did COVID right, and you talked about media beating him up. He did COVID very well. He reopened public spaces well ahead of everybody. People died, but people died everywhere. People didn't die, outsourced in Florida that they did in other places. As a matter of fact, Florida is the second oldest second oldest state in the union, and they were in the mid-20s when it came to death rate. So they were doing really well with their medical response. And he tranced out vaccines well. He's fought against transing the Disney. I say transing the kid, Disney, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. He's fought against Disney and their trans agenda and their radical LGBTQ agendas. He's fought against transing the kids and made it illegal to perform these medical procedures or even prescribe these medicines to the youth of Florida. He's done a good job caring for his state through this natural disaster. He's doing everything right.
Yeah. Against all conventional Republican wisdom for the last 30 years. And it's going very well. So
yeah, and he's not afraid to punch the media in the teeth when they come at him, which
is what people love about Trump. Like, I mean, that's what Trump had. And really, Trump wasn't as good at it as he should have been because Trump always really wanted to be praised by the media.
Because he always was. You think about Trump's life. I mean, he was always a media darling. He was the fan of the rappers. He won Emmys. I mean, goodness. I mean, you look at who he was. He was a celebrity, and then he started to run for president. And he's like, "Whoa, what happened to all the praise that you used to give me? What's the deal?" Right.
So I think
DeSantis is not that way.
I think DeSantis and Trump both running is an okay situation. I think DeSantis running and Trump not running is I kind of like that better, but it may not be as good for the same reason that Trump running by himself would not be as good. DeSantis needs somebody to run against.
In any world, I don't think in any world they're running unopposed. It's an
I know, but there's a difference between running like unopposed and running like okay, Trump was running against Jeb Bush. I mean, is Jeb Bush a threat kind of thing? Like he was running against Ted Cruz, who that was an opposition. But if
Marco Rubio,
if DeSantis gets in there with just a bunch of wishy-washy Republicans, it's going to be functionally the same as
Ron. Yeah, like if it's just him and Margaret Taylor Greene or whatever her name is.
It needs to be someone I could consider maybe voting for. And so I think Trump not running, I think we just need to get away from boomers in politics in general. I think they've stuck around long enough. I don't like. I will vote for Trump if he is the nominee in 2024. But good Lord, look at Biden and
Yeah,
Trump's
just look at the image in front
we
of you.
talk about how vibrant Trump is as an old man. That's not going to last forever, and when it goes down quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really rich. Go enjoy your money. Like, just go home. But
Yeah.
boomers will never leave us alone. So we succeeded in turning our hurricane story into a 2024 story. I guess.
Oh yeah, look at
I
that.
guess.
Look at that.
Yeah, that'll probably be the next 2 years.
And it wasn't even on
We're going to
purpose.
turn everything into that. Yeah. So.
Oh, all right. So you want to move forward with possible nuclear war?
Yeah. Let's move on to that cheery topic.
Yeah. So the war in Ukraine, and I know some people, many people have become uninterested in this. I'm not going to say that I've even followed it closely, but there have been some developments, and I feel like they're worth talking about. According to the UN, I want to start with casualties. According to the UN, civilian casualties are right at 6,000, a little under 6,000 killed, a little over 8,800 wounded. That is a minimum number. It is thought to be higher. We really don't know. Ukrainian casualties, according to Ukraine, is 10,000 killed, 30,000 wounded, 7,200 missing, and 5,600 captured. Russian casualties, now this is according to the U.S., Russian casualties are somewhere in the 70 to 80,000 killed and wounded, and probably 20,000 of those killed. Jeff, I want your reaction to those numbers first and foremost. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm real cynical.
Sure.
So I don't believe them, first of all.
Yes.
I think that the U.S. is going to provide more accurate Russian casualties than Ukraine will, but U.S. has a vested interest in Ukraine winning this conflict, not Russia. So I don't know that is. I still don't think that's going to be accurate. Ukraine is.
Well, if you look up Russia's accounts, it's somewhere like 5,600 killed, according to Russia.
Yeah, and they're outright lying for sure.
Yeah.
Ukraine casualties are also probably underreported.
Probably
because it's Ukraine giving the numbers. So I don't like what we can see. However, what I like to look at is land control, which does appear to be swinging in Ukraine's favor. And then you look at also external factors like Russia having to draft people. That suggests that Russian casualties are very bad.
Yeah, so you talked about land control. Russia had basically taken over the Donbass region shortly after Crimea, like just basically the whole region. And in the past month or so, Ukraine has really launched a good counteroffensive. They have gained back much of the land that they've lost in the Donbass, if not all of it, and that's Luhansk and that area. The picture that is in front of everybody is the only bridge connecting Crimea and Russia. And as you see, it's on fire. So they have successfully hit that bridge because Russia has taken Crimea, and they're trying to cut off any support that they can to Crimea. I mean, the first thing before we get into the nuclear war aspect of it is what I've learned from this is that Russia is not nearly as powerful as we thought they were.
Yeah, and I think that was always it depends. Like, so there's a big scare, obviously, that sort of ended as we were close to when we were born. The big Red Scare. This is the case with both Russia and China. They have always been not as big of a deal as the average person thinks, but even those people that aren't that problematic, even those countries that aren't that much of a threat, you can't play footsie with those countries as our ruling class has done over the past 50 years. Not so much with Russia, more so with China. But these countries are not a threat to, I would say, the United States military of 10 years ago. They are more of a threat to the United States military of today, simply because of the direction of our military.
Yeah, I know our military is taking a hit. I realize that the people in the administration have really negatively impacted our military. I was reading a number earlier. It's like currently our military is 15,000 under their recruitment goals for the year, which is terrible. However, having said that, is what I have learned about China and Russia is they are both subprime powers. You know, people
Oh
call
yeah,
them the other superpowers. They're not superpowers.
they're
The
not.
definition of a
Yeah,
superpower is a country that can actively fight on two fronts. They can have two fronts going on at the same time. There's only one superpower in the world, and that is the United States. It's not even close.
all right.
Not even close. We own the majority of all of the aircraft carriers in the world, and our aircraft carriers are far superior to the other aircraft. It's not even close. And so I was really shocked. I thought, I thought this was going to be a few days. As soon as Russia came in, they were either going to take over or not, and then this has become a war of attrition, which leads to the next point: how long can a flailing subprime power claiming to be a superpower, Russia, a country that is a gas tank attached to an oligarchy, right? How long can they hold on? And that leads to what we were talking about with, is there a possibility of nuclear war in Europe? And before we get to that, I keep saying we're going to get to that. Before we get to that, I put all of this on the back of Joe Biden, because he was not strong up front. He was not strong with the closing of Nord Stream 2 pipeline. If he would not have allowed that pipeline to start, I sincerely doubt that this war ever would have happened. On top of that, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan just empowers other people in other countries. They think the big man's gone and they're going to try to put their name in the ring. That is why we have to speak loudly and carry a big stick. We've got to do
Yeah.
both. And he didn't do that. Recently,
Yeah.
at a fundraising event in New York, here's some comments that the president said at a private fundraising event. We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. We've got a guy I know fairly well. He's not joking when he talks about potential use of a tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons, because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming. He went on to say, I don't think there's anything such as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. We are trying to figure out what is Putin's off ramp. Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself where he does not only lose face but significant power?
Yeah. So
That's all a very
yeah, we need to talk about this. So, like, and a lot of people don't really understand foreign policy and war. I am one of those people. It's not something I'm super interested in. I have pretty much what I have defined as my stance on things, and and I try to broadly apply that as much as possible. But when he's talking about, and he's talking about stuff that you should know about, this war needs an off ramp for the aggressing party, Russia, because without without an off ramp, Russia is more dangerous. We talk about how like
mm-hmm.
they kind of just folded under this Ukrainian resistance, and that is true. That is somewhat surprising, but again, communist countries don't inspire a lot of morale in their armies. They have very outdated equipment. I'm not. I'm a little surprised by Russia's almost defeat here,
Mm-hmm.
but not super surprised. What does make them dangerous is if Russia loses this war, then Putin will be assassinated. That is how Russia works. That is like everyone around Putin is waiting for an opportunity where he looks sufficiently weak and can be taken out. That is how the oligarchy works. And So he appears to also be in bad health. It is in his interest to not lose this war, period,
Mhm.
end of discussion.
Mhm.
And that actually does somewhat legitimize the threat of nuclear weapons.
And the UN, NATO, the US, no one is giving him an off ramp. No one is providing an off ramp. No one's even talking about an off ramp. As a matter of fact, the rhetoric that we keep hearing from the White House is increasing the possibility of him using a tactical nuclear weapon. Every time you hear the phrase Putin's price hike, well, what they're saying is, hey, well, the reason you're paying more for your gas is President Putin because of the war that he has put on. Well, US, that leaves you in one of two situations. If it's his fault and Americans are suffering, you end the war by supporting Ukraine or you end the war by supporting Russia. Which is it going to be? The war's got to end. And we're going, okay, well, we're supporting Ukraine. Well, what does that do to Putin? What kind of pressure does that put on him? It's a bad recipe.
Right. And so the most peaceful option for everyone is for Russia to have a way to extricate itself without giving up too much. Which may lead us into what you wanted to talk about with Elon Musk. But I mean, yeah, and you're right. We're not giving that to them yet. And honestly, I think if that's going to be a legitimate way out, if we are going to be serious about giving an off ramp, U.S. has got to stop being as involved as it is.
Yeah.
Like they've been hurt. Let them, yeah. Which I'm not typically a fan. Like I'm typically a fan of the U.S. being involved and strong, not unnecessarily so. But we can talk about that.
Yeah, and so Elon this past week, as everybody can see before them, put up what he thought was his off ramp. What he thought, and man, it is amazing how fast the media has turned on this man. He went from being the savior of the world with his electric car company in the eyes of the media, a darling to them. They loved this man to he's evil, awful. He's terrible. He's a white supremacist. He was raised up by blah, 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 all these terrible things. And all he is trying to do is say, hey, there needs to be an off ramp. Now, as everybody can see, he says the peace, redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. What is he talking about? They did some elections a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, a couple weeks ago, in the Donbass region. Some elections.
Right.
You got to put the air quotes up because I think it came back like 91% and 93% for being annexed and being a part of Russia. And there's reports and videos and camera and photos taken of people being taken out of their homes at gunpoint by Russian soldiers to go vote to be a part of Russia. Like it was far from a free and fair election. So I think he's being a little pie in the sky with the redoing of this election. Crimea formally a part of Russia as it has been since 1783 until Kirchhoff's mistake. Crimea, one of the reasons that Russia wants Ukraine is in Russian history and Soviet history. Ukraine and especially Crimea are a significant part of that. One of my favorite Russian composers, one of the movements to his pictures in an exhibition is the Great Gates of Kiev. To them, that was a part of Russia. And so Crimea is a really important part to Russian history. And so, I mean, they've basically been under control of Russia since like 2004 anyway. Water supply to Crimea assured. That if you're going to formally make it a part of Crimea of Russia, then you got to make sure they have water. And then Ukraine remains neutral, meaning they cannot join NATO. They cannot join. They cannot join the West, as it were. The war in the eastern part of Ukraine has been going on for a long time. Some people say 2008, some people say 2012, some people say 2014. The east of Ukraine, where they had these elections, this Donbass region, have been Russian sympathizers for a long time. There's a lot of Russian sympathizers in that area. Doubt it's 91 or 93%. Especially when you're having to pull people out by force and by the arm of the gun in order to get them to go vote. But I think he's onto something here in the sense that in order to make this conflict stop, they can't take losses. Russia can't take losses, and if we're gonna have this idea that well, you're not supporting Ukraine because you're saying this. No, that's not the case at all. I don't want a tactical nuclear weapon to blow up on Ukrainians. That's why I'm saying this. I'm being practical about it. I mean, this is a significant land war that is happening in Europe. This isn't happening in some obscure part of the world. This is happening in Europe. And if a tactical nuclear weapon goes off, what's that going to create?
Yep. So, again, this is part of why I don't like foreign policy. There's no clean solutions. And like, I see a lot of people who oversimplify the issue on both the dove and the hawk side. One thing obviously that does not need to happen is there does not need to be direct American involvement. No more than
right. We don't want boots on the ground.
Right. And we should actually be less involved than we currently are. I would love for both parties in America to stop sending blank checks to Ukraine.
Man,
that's a little bit libertarian for me. I'm not really a libertarian, but we're struggling. Stop sending our money elsewhere.
When this started, I get it. When this conflict started, I really do get why we were sending money over there when it started.
Right.
Now, no. It's time to pull away from this. Now, I do want to address his going back to President Biden, his remarks concerning Armageddon. Armageddon is a biblical term, and this is a misunderstanding of what Armageddon is and was, and not people are looking forward to this great battle of Armageddon. This comes from the dispensational premillennialist view of Revelation. I actually had to pull out your favorite translation of the Bible even to get the word, because my translation of the Bible doesn't use the word Armageddon. The only time the word is mentioned is in Revelation 16, verse 16. But we'll start in 15 for fun. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be seen exposed. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Now, my favorite translation of the Bible is the New American Standard Bible, and it uses the term Harmageddon, because this is, in Hebrew, the Hebrew term is referring to a place called Mageddon, which is in northern Samaria, which was a common battlefield. It's referenced in the book of Revelation because they're not talking about some battle to end all battles. And that's what everybody talks about when they talk about these nuclear weapons. Like, if somebody sets off a nuclear weapon, it's going to start Armageddon and the second coming of Christ. And it's like, you don't understand Revelation. If you're going to use biblical words, use them in biblical ways. Revelation 1, verse 1. John is writing about the things that, quote, must soon take place. It's been 2,000 years since he wrote that book. Armageddon has come and gone, right? He was talking to them in the first century about something specific. So I don't like it when people use biblical words and they don't know what they're talking about. That's just not something that I like.
Well, Joe Biden's a very bad Catholic.
Very bad Catholic.
I wouldn't imagine that he really knows what he's talking about. But you're right. It is a common use of the term.
Yeah, misuse of the term. But Elon, he's offering an off-ramp, and people tried to burn him at the stake for it. They tried to crucify him over this, and I think he's a little pie in the sky about some things. I don't think there's going to be a free and fair election in the eastern regions of Ukraine. I wish there were. I love eastern Ukraine. You and I, as Christians, there are a lot of brothers and sisters in Christ in eastern Ukraine. I don't know how accurate this was. This might have been a part of the propaganda wing, but I read a source from the Brotherhood that said that there were more churches in the eastern parts of Ukraine than there were in the rest of Europe. I mean, Now, when we say churches, we're talking specifically the church.
I think Eastern Europe is certainly more Christian than Western Europe, for sure.
Yeah, and so there were a lot of active Christians there, and I hope for the sake that this can stop. We don't need to see this affecting our brotherhood anymore.
Right. Obviously, we advocate for people like that's what sort of gets lost in all of this. We talk about what we want at home, and like the circles that I run in, I'm seeing a lot of why do we care? And from a political perspective, I can see why you might think that. Now, I think for a lot of reasons you're wrong. America does need to care about what goes on in the world if we want to be the prime superpower in the world. But in this particular instance, yeah, Ukraine appears not to need a lot of our help. This seems to be going in their favor and maybe hopefully drawing to a close. But the problem with the way America works is that once something starts, it doesn't easily stop. And that includes foreign aid.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be giving all this money to Ukraine so that they can basically run this war. Mm-hmm. And then when the war is over, that will simply change into we're giving all this money to Ukraine so that they can rebuild. And then it will never stop. And
we give so much money to people who hate us. It's ridiculous.
It'll be a line item. So,
yeah.
But I can't stand foreign policy.
I don't mind it. I've gotten more interested in it in the past 2 or 3 years.
I will sometimes be interested in it, but like I was interested in it for Afghanistan just because of how much of a crap hole decision that was. Yeah, but well,
let's get on to something you do care about.
I care about the real important things like Twitter. Speaking of Elon Musk, so if you're not aware, and I know a lot of our viewers probably don't actively use Twitter, it's not very popular in our area. I think it's very popular, especially with younger people, but even people our age that we know don't really use Twitter. So I think it's probably more of a big city kind of thing. Like if you're young and single, you might have a Twitter. But I have a Twitter. I love Twitter.
You're not young or single, so what's your point?
I love Twitter. I'm just saying my peers don't use it as much as I would think. But I love Twitter. It's how I get my news quickly. I don't like Facebook at all. But I do like Twitter. I don't know. It's more dopamine, I guess. But anyway, the big story today, not today, but this week, is Elon Musk has renewed his offer to buy Twitter. So if you're not familiar with the big affair of Elon Musk trying to take over Twitter, a couple months back, he announced that he was putting forth an offer to purchase for more than 50% of Twitter shares for $54.20 a share. Because he wanted 420 to be in there because he's a meme lord. And this amounted to over $44 billion. He made a $44 billion offer to acquire Twitter and basically take it to being a private company, whereas it's currently a publicly traded company. What this would mean is that he would basically have full control. I think you would no longer be able to buy stock, and there would be less input from like a board and shareholders meetings and stuff like he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Basically, you think of companies with CEOs saying the CEO can do whatever he wants. It's not really true. If you have a publicly traded company with a CEO, the CEO runs the company, but he does not control the overall policies and implementations of the company itself. That's controlled by shareholders who are represented by a board of directors. And basically he would get rid of the board of directors and he'd just make all the decisions himself. He did this reportedly because he believes that Twitter is the public town square for our world, essentially. And Twitter's decisions in the past couple of years have been thematically anti-free speech. They ban people clearly for political agendas. They famously permanently banned Trump after his loss in the 2020 election. And they are doing this very commonly anytime they see something that they disagree with politically. Elon Musk is a free speech absolutist, and so he wishes to purchase Twitter so that he can protect its free speech enterprise. Now, this is really what has made the left mad at Elon Musk over the past few months, because they like Twitter being basically an arm of their political agenda. So it fell through. The deal fell through, I think, in June or July, when Elon Musk had a concern over how many of Twitter's users are actual users rather than bots, and he wanted to launch an investigation into this, and Twitter refused. So he said, okay, I'm going to back out of the deal if you're not going to tell me how many of your users are bots rather than real people, because it's probably not worth what I'm offering for it. He was already offering a premium for it. And they were getting ready to go to court this month. And last week, he renewed his offer at the original amount of $44 billion to buy Twitter. Now, there's some dispute over whether Twitter is accepting it or if they do want to take him to court over all of this, but that's not as important. So you don't like Twitter. What do you think?
I think there are a lot of bots on Twitter.
Oh yeah, they were saying it was like 5%. There's no way that's true.
It's huge. It's huge. I think that controlling speech is wrong, and that's what they have been doing. I hope Elon succeeds. So what I guess we need to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say it is the digital town square, because even in our generation, we don't understand the phrase the town square. The society hasn't functioned that way in our lifetimes. What people mean when they talk about that is it is the space that you use to publicly talk about issues. And what Twitter has done is they have banned people for their opinions. Opinions, not facts, not figures, opinions. And Elon he's seeing that is wrong. He's seeing that it's disintegrating our culture even more, and he saw that he had the means to fix it. It's not a financial choice for him, because if it were, he wouldn't be offering $44 billion, because Twitter's not worth that.
It's not.
So it's not a financial decision. It is a right versus wrong thing with Elon. I've watched a lot of his interviews on this topic from various sources. He goes on podcasts and talks about this a good bit. It really is a principled matter for him. And like you said, it has made him, and this issue has made him an enemy of those on the left, because they have now created speech to be violence. And they literally, words are violence. They will tell you that. If I tell you that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, it is a binary, and that a man cannot be a woman and a woman cannot be a man, there are people in this world that will look at me and say, you just committed violence against me. You don't want me to exist. No, that's not true. I want you to exist. I love you and I love your soul, but I want you to understand that you were made in the image of God, and he made you either a man or a woman. And so that kind of speech is being suppressed because it is harmful, and he sees the damage that is doing, and he's right. I hope he does acquire Twitter, and I hope that he does fix it, because I think he can. I think if anybody's equipped to fix Twitter, he is.
Yeah. Well, and I like Elon Musk. Obviously, he's very liberal. He has a lot of positions I disagree with, but I like what he's doing here. I like it because it's a win from my side. I've actually come around pretty radically in the past few months to disagreeing with his free speech absolutist
Mhm.
stance. I don't
I'm not a
know.
free speech absolutist.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I'm just pro free speech in general anymore. I I think it is. I think viewpoint discrimination, which is what this is, what Twitter's
Yeah.
engaged in, is okay. And I think our side has spent the last 50 years basically giving up the fight on this front. We have taken the live and let live approach. We have taken the approach of your words are not harmful to me or mine, and because of that, the rhetoric on the left has gotten ever and more radical, and
To a point
they
that it is literally causing violence.
right.
They are literally calling. I'm not saying that their words are the things that are hurtful. No, I'm saying they are literally using their words to call for violence.
Right.
There's a
Well, I
difference
mean,
in those
and it's
phrases.
not even just they're calling for violence, yes, but their ideas are dangerous. I think that in the probably near, maybe further than I'd like future, it will be just you will be persona non grata for being of the left. We're going to go back to kind of witch trials for all the damage that they're doing here
Do you think the
because
pendulum's going to swing that hard?
I think that you can only bend something so far until it breaks. I think we talked about
Okay.
this when we talk about
Hmm.
there's going to be someone who rises up on the right who is the dictator that they have claimed to be afraid of for so long. And I think when you get that person like that doesn't really care, who realizes that his rule is going to be short term, he's just going to make it illegal to be liberal. And effectively, I mean, kind of like what they're doing on the right now. It's almost effectively illegal to be pro life. We'll talk about that in a minute. Um, so yeah, I'm not opposed to viewpoint discrimination, and I am fully willing to admit that I am only in favor of it if it favors my side, because my side is right.
Yeah,
Um,
you have become more radical in the past
I,
few months
I
on that.
have, I
When I
have,
say I'm
and
not a free speech and absolutist, I mean all this nonsense that I see going on in the classrooms. Well, I talk about this with my students, and I talk about that with my students. No, that's wrong. You shut your mouth and you teach math. You teach social
yeah,
studies. They don't need to know what your trans group is doing on the weekend. Like
right,
I don't know my elementary teachers' first names, let alone who their spouses were. And so when
right.
I say I'm not a free speech absolutist, um, I think we have
You
taken
don't
it
get
too
to
far.
say whatever you want in whatever context. Yeah, I get
That's
that.
right. That's right.
And I think nobody's really that insane. But no, I just I think we need to engage in more viewpoint discrimination simply because we have allowed these poisonous, rather dangerous ideas to fester for too long. And yeah, you're right. I mean, like I said, I've changed a lot on that lately. Um, but
Huh.
anyway, but Elon Musk allowing Twitter to be free will allow me to rant my crazy ideas on the internet freely.
For all
Um,
20 of your followers.
I have 40, so I
Uh,
don't think any of them ever see anything. I don't think they get on Twitter, but yeah. So I really do hope this deal goes through. I think the way that Twitter is going, yeah, I mean it's honestly killing itself. So
mhm.
honestly, we have opened Pandora's box with social media in general. I think the time will come when people are sort of anti social media.
Mhm.
I'm hoping for that renaissance.
Yeah,
But
that would be a good thing for our
there will
society.
always be some sort of social media, and it is better for us if that social media is free.
Mhm.
Because if it's not free, it's never going to be restrictive in our favor. Um, so it either needs to be free or it's going to be restrictive in their favor.
Mhm.
Um, so that we talked about Twitter longer than I anticipated.
Yeah, me too. I was shocked by that. But let's go on to this
Yeah.
last one. You mentioned
Yes.
it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we got to talk about this.
It is almost illegal to be pro-life in America these days. So if you have not been paying attention in the past couple of weeks, the FBI has made a habit. I wouldn't say habit. It has on multiple occasions
Mhm.
arrested prominent pro-life leaders and taken them in at gunpoint in front of their families and everything. We actually have an example of this. This is the wife of one of these individuals who was taken in, trying to get some answers from the agents that have just arrested her husband and placed him in the back of a car.
No, I want to know why you were banging on my door with a gun.
Hey, let's go back to that.
You're not going to tell me anything?
No, we're not.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
You did not try. This is not acceptable.
So notice that these are not like detectives. He's got a
Can I have
rifle.
your name? You're not going to give me your name. You're not going to give me any information.
They have Tennessee plates. I just noticed that.
Yeah, this was
They're in undercover vehicles. Yeah.
This is there were 11 arrests in Tennessee last week. The first prominent arrest that took place was actually late last month in Pennsylvania. Mark Huck, I think it was. Yes, Mark Huck was arrested by 20 armed FBI agents on Friday, September 23rd. 11 other pro-lifers were arrested by the FBI and local police, some local police, on Wednesday this past week, and those all occurred in due to an incident apparently that occurred in Tennessee. Not all of the arrests occurred in Tennessee, but the alleged event occurred in Tennessee.
So give me some context here. These domestic terrorists, are they firebombing abortion centers? Are they defacing property? What are they doing?
Apparently, many of these people have been under investigation by the DOJ for the better part of a year for there's apparently a federal law that says you cannot hamper someone's ability to get an abortion. And these are pro-life protesters. They would do things like blockade abortion clinics. They would do, nothing violent, but they would do what pro-lifers should be doing. They would go and stand out in front of abortion clinics. They would preach and teach, and they would occasionally, yes, they would block doors. That's I think the kicker here. Mark Huck was arrested because he, the Pennsylvania pro-lifer, was arrested because apparently during one of his visits to the abortion clinic in his area, he brought his son, and someone got in his son's face, and he pushed the person. And so months and months later, he is arrested for this act.
Yeah, get in my son's face and see what happens. Yeah, no,
Right.
I'm going to push you too. You're going to hope all I do is push you. I'm going to protect my child.
And more importantly, these are FBI agents that are acting at the direct request of the Department of Justice. Now, these are two separate entities.
Wild.
Now, if the FBI is part of the Department of Justice, but the FBI conducts its own investigations. It has its own things that it's supposed to be doing, and it conducts its own arrests. The DOJ is more intricately tied to the White House. Now we can discuss whether there need to be all these agencies that aren't as directly tied to the White House, but the DOJ is more intimately tied to the White House. Yeah, I would lay this at the Biden administration's feet. Ultimately, some directive has come from someone, either at the Department of Justice or maybe even at the White House, that all of these people you're keeping an eye, all these pro-lifers that you're keeping an eye on, pull the trigger. We're going after them. Many of these people have been let out on bail for misdemeanor charges, but I don't know that all of them have. And this is all made worse in light of the fact that over the past several months, there have been an uptick in attacks, vandalism attacks against pro-life pregnancy centers and Catholic organizations in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
And see, that's why I asked the question I asked, because I know what's happening at crisis pregnancy centers. I know what's happening at these Catholic organizations. They are firebombing these places. They're setting them ablaze. They are defacing them. And so I asked, well, are these people doing these things to these abortion clinics, to these Planned Parenthoods, whatever it may be? And the answer is no. They're blocking the door, or they're standing across the sidewalk and not letting people pass. But we're not opening federal investigations. We're not sicking the FBI on people who are literally lighting ablaze crisis pregnancy centers, places where women go to get diapers, to get formula for their babies, to get sonograms before the baby gets there, to help care for these single mothers. That we're going to attack those places, but not the places that killed the baby. Our world's upside down.
Yeah,
it's absolutely upside down.
As far as we're aware, there are no investigations into such events.
Yeah,
it would be a federal issue because they're happening across the country.
Yes, it is mind-boggling. And that's the theme that we see. And I'm going to give you my opinion why I think this is happening. The Democrats are going to get shellacked in November. And the only issue that they have a positive approval rating on is abortion. The problem with that is it's not important to anyone. It's not a kitchen table issue. It's not the inflation. It's not gas prices. It's not how people are putting food on the table for their family. The unemployment rate, the rise in interest cost.
Right.
Interests cost.
You might be right. I think that this will, if that is true, I think this will have the opposite effect that they want.
I agree, but I think that's why they're doing it. They think it's a winning issue. It's not.
Yeah, the more public that these things become, the more galvanized their opponents are going to be. This is not going to get anyone more likely to go to the polls that wasn't already going to go. The people that are worried about Roe v. Wade being overturned, they're going to like this, but they're also already going to vote for you.
Yeah.
This is not going, all of your independents and all of your more moderate Democrats, they're not going to care about this. They may even dislike it. So, yep, there you have it. The takeover is good. And let's be honest, I called this episode Dismantle the FBI. Yes, the FBI is only doing the Department of Justice bidding here, and they are related entities. I think the FBI would be part of the Department of Justice, but the FBI is, and Stephen wanted to talk about some of the more historical things going on. The FBI, what you need to know, is an irredeemable agency. A lot of the agencies are. But the FBI has been sent out to do a lot of awful, awful things here lately. That they're kind of being the scapegoats for a lot of the other horrible decisions made by other agencies. I think the FBI is a prime example of one we just need to dismantle outright, fire all of those people, don't move them to other departments, send everyone home without a paycheck, and let that be the spark that lights the fire of doing that elsewhere. So I think since we talked about 2024 earlier, we can bring it back around. When you are looking at who you want to vote for, and 2022 as well, you need to expect this of your senators and your representatives as well. think about whether that person is going to advocate for the dismantling of the FBI. That needs to be a litmus test. Because
dismantling of the alphabet agencies at large.
Sure, but let's start with the FBI because they're easy to pin this on. Because if they're not willing to do that, this is just going to continue. And we are pro law enforcement here. The FBI is not on your side. They are a captured entity, and it doesn't matter if a Republican is in office or a Democrat is in office. They are always going to do the bidding of the left. Ultimately,
look at what they did to Trump for 3 years, based on Russian Oppo research against Trump. For 3 years, they went after the man. I wish we could have
representative is not,
but we don't.
If your representative is not going to dismantle the FBI or call for it, ask them why. That's what you need to start doing.
Yeah, why?
Yeah,
absolutely. That's gross.
What? That's gross. Oh,
yeah, just the whole.
Yeah. They got their rifles. They're in their undercover cars. They didn't send 2 suits to maybe talk to the man and take him in if that was what they needed to do. They sent
they sent a goon squad.
Yeah.
They sent a goon squad, and I mean, y'all, this is Tennessee.
To arrest this man. Yeah. Again, we talk about this all the time. This is happening in your backyard.
Well, and on top of that, what happens the next time they show up to a guy that's got more firearms than they do?
I think that's what they were worried about, but
yeah, they're in Tennessee. I'd be worried about it too.
Yeah. So, well, that is our time. As always, we revel in bringing you just the brightest and most heartwarming stories on the internet. Please, if you are a fan, if you are enjoying this content, let us know on Facebook and or YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on either Spotify or what's the other one? Apple Podcasts.
Apple.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, please get those into us on any of those platforms. We would be happy to address them. Thank you so much for tuning in, Stephen.
All right. See y'all later. Be blessed.
Bye.